afternoon. I'm Steve Shalom, the director of the Gandhian Forum for Peace and Justice and a faculty member in the Political Science Department. Thank you all for coming. The Gandhian Forum was established at William Patterson in 2008 with the mission of promoting dialogue and education on some of the great challenges that confront the human race in the 21st century, resolving conflicts, eliminating war, and advancing the cause of social justice. As part of that mission, we bring to campus speakers who can educate, engage, and challenge us. The Gandhian Forum believes, as do the co-sponsors for today's event, the Political Science Department, the Asian Studies Program, the College of Humanities and Social Sciences, the Katsakos College of Business, and the Office of the Provost, that one of the goals of the university is to, and I quote now from the official university document, ensure that students are challenged to think and act creatively about critical issues by providing guest lectures, workshops, and seminars from diverse perspectives. Our speaker today has just written a book about the thought of Mahatma Gandhi, the namesake of the Gandhian Forum. It was an obvious choice to invite him to come to share his analysis with us. Will we all agree with his reading of Gandhi? We wait to hear his arguments. But this we know. The quest to discover what Gandhi or anyone believed is part of the search for the truth, and that's a quest that Gandhi would have wholeheartedly endorsed. Norman Finkelstein got his PhD from Princeton University. He's the author of 7 books, most of them dealing with the Middle East. Professor Avi Shleim, an Israeli-British historian at Oxford University, who is recognized as one of the world's leading experts on the Israel-Palestine conflict, calls Finkelstein a, quote, very impressive, learned, and careful scholar. His work has also been praised by the late Raoul Hilberg, one of the best known and most distinguished of Holocaust historians, and author of the essential 3-volume work, The Destruction of the European Jews. As Professor Finkelstein studied the troubled history of the Israel-Palestine conflict, he wondered if there was a way to achieve a nonviolent end to the Israeli occupation of Palestinian land. And he decided to look at the writings of Gandhi to see what insights he could glean. He discovered that Gandhi's collected works ran to some 100 volumes. He's read about half of them. Now, some of the students in the audience are probably saying, well, how come he only had to do half the readings? We're always being told we need to do all the readings. Well, you can stop when you've finished 25,000 pages, as Professor Finkelstein has. From his reading, Professor Finkelstein came to believe that common understandings of Gandhi are incomplete. And he concluded as well that Gandhi's ideas can be applied not just to the Israel-Palestine conflict, but to the Arab Spring, to Occupy Wall Street, and to many other contemporary struggles. This is what led him to write his book. Professor Finkelstein will speak for about 45 minutes, and then we'll use the remainder of the time for question and answer and discussion. Now, I know that some of you have been given a leaflet that attacks our speaker. The leaflet tells you what he's going to say, but I hope you'll listen for yourself and hear what he actually has to say. The leaflet also says a bunch of false and slimy things about Professor Finkelstein that he's not planning to address in his prepared remarks. He's been invited to talk about Gandhi. But by all means, if anyone wants to ask him a question based on the leaflet or on anything else during the question and answer period, please feel free to do so. We encourage discussion and different points of view. I might note that if you'd like to get a copy of Professor Finkelstein's book on Gandhi and read it for yourself, it's available in the back for $5, half off the list price. And now, without further ado, I'm proud to present Professor Norman Finkelstein.
Well, thank you for having me. Let's just do a simple sound check. Back row, you hear me fine? Good. Okay. Well, thank you for having me here this afternoon. I'm going to be speaking on the Mahatma, Mr. Gandhi. I can tell from once having been a professor, there are some students here who have been conscripted into being here. That means they're here under coercion or force. And so my challenge always is to satisfy those students so they actually want to stay. And so I'm going to make occasional eye contact with them and see if I'm succeeding in my goal. Yes, I know. As Steve mentioned, Gandhi is actually a quite formidable undertaking. I didn't quite know what I was going to get into when I started reading him. He comes to he comes to exactly 98 volumes, and it's about 500 pages per volume. It was a surprise to me when I went to NYU to start checking out his collected works. It was a surprise to me that apart from one volume, I was the first person that ever checked out any of Gandhi's volumes from the NYU library, and they had acquired the collected works. You could tell at the beginning it's stamped. They had acquired it in 1985. I mentioned that not to denigrate the scholarly accomplishments of or bona fides of NYU, but because I think a lot of people talk about Gandhi and they think they know Gandhi, and Gandhi seems like a pretty simple figure, lacking in any pretense, and you just think Gandhi, nonviolence, pretty straightforward, pretty simple. But on a moment's reflection, when you start thinking about it, nonviolence is not really a very obvious or simple concept. And when you read through, I read about half of the Gandhi's collected works, you realize it's very complicated, exactly what Gandhi's trying to say and what he has in mind. Now, I'm going to make two caveats. Caveats, just a fancy word for qualifications. Number one, the 100 volumes don't contain any systematic exposition of what Gandhi means by nonviolence. Most of the 100 volumes is letters that Gandhi wrote. He spent a lot of time in jail, and he had what he called silent periods every day, where for like 2 or 3 hours, he didn't text message. He just did his work. And most of the 100 volumes is not political in a normal sense of the term. Most of it actually is devoted to diet and good health. Gandhi was a kind of premature Oprah. He was obsessed with his diet and his weight. When he's in prison, many of his letters, literally most of his letters, consist of, I weigh 90.5 pounds. I weigh 91 pounds. I weigh 89 pounds. I felt it was a little too much information for my interest, but these were private letters to friends. And he was absolutely obsessed also with diet, home cures. Gandhi had a home cure for everything. He was the head of an ashram. People were constantly getting ill in the ashram, and he was always prescribing some home cure or other for illnesses, everything from constipation to impotence. Gandhi had his magical cure for it, and that's a large part of the collected works. The actual politics in the narrow sense, I would say it probably doesn't take up more than half of Gandhi's collected works, and that half is mostly speeches by Gandhi. So, that's the first qualification. The second thing about Gandhi is doesn't pretend to be a theorist or somebody trying to create a systematic theory of nonviolence. He doesn't really care about theories very much, and he doesn't care very much about being consistent in what he says. He'll say one thing one day, something else the next day. He will claim quite often that he's not contradicting himself. In fact, he is contradicting himself, and it's perfectly obvious. And then he would say, I don't really care. He said, just judge me by my actions, and don't look for intellectual or theoretical consistency. Gandhi was, as he said, he's essentially a man of action. He wants to get things done. And getting something done today requires contradicting something he said the day before. He didn't really care. He was much smarter, even in the conventional sense, than most people would take him to be. Obviously, everyone knew him to be politically very shrewd. He drove the British mad, because he was politically very shrewd. But he was also much better read than you would think. We know that because in his prison letters, he's talking about the books he's ordered and the books he's read. And he's read a lot. And he's, one of the things I really admired about him was that Gandhi was constantly ordering books on the minutiae, the details of peasant life in India. He wants to know every detail about how the poor of India, how they live. He wants to know about soil conservation. He wants to know about the water. He wants to know about everything. The most dull, technical treatises and texts. That's what Gandhi is constantly ordering. And it tells you something about him. That's what it means to be a real organizer. You have to know the people. And you have to know every detail of their life to really understand, to really get inside the people and become a leader of them. So he was, much smarter, I think, than he led on. He liked to give the impression of being very simple. No, he was not. He was very shrewd, very smart, very calculating. The other thing about Gandhi that makes it a little bit difficult to present a Gandhi doctrine is that Gandhi's whole thinking was steeped in religious faith. And so it's very hard to give a rational accounting of what Gandhi is trying to do. Gandhi relied on what he calls his inner voice. He keeps referring to, my inner voice tells me to do this, my inner voice tells me to do that. A few years ago, I was in South Africa, and as many of you know, Gandhi spent a long period of his life there, and his granddaughter lives there, and I spent some time with her, Ella Gandhi, really a very terrific person, I have to say. And one of the things she commented to me was, she said Gandhi had great confidence in his inner voice. He says at one point, I am not guided by reason, but by instinct, or in other words, by the inner voice. And one never knows where that voice would lead you to. So when you would ask him for his reasoning, why are you doing this? What's the argument behind doing that? He would simply say, well, that's what my inner voice tells me to do. And obviously, it's not possible to argue rationally with an inner voice. And that, I think, speaks to a really unattractive, unappealing side of Gandhi, which was the very authoritarian and I guess we can call it dictatorial side. You either agreed with him or you're out. It was not possible really to disagree with Gandhi, because how do you argue with an inner voice? And so it was an element of his which was, I think, it was deeply undemocratic. On the other hand, I kind of accepted it because politics is often about just having good political instincts. You can have all the fancy theories in the world, but often politics comes down to just having good judgment and good instincts. And you can't really explain that rationally. Why at a particular moment in time somebody says you should do A instead of B. Well, he or she will give some elaborate theoretical explanation. But the elaborate theoretical explanation really doesn't get to the heart of it. The heart of it is some gut instinct tells me this is the right thing to do at this particular moment. And some people have good instincts and some don't. Gandhi had very good political instincts. I think people like Trotsky and Lenin had very good instincts. I happen to think Professor Chomsky has very good political instincts, very good judgment. My good friend Alan Nairn, for those of you who know him, he has very excellent political judgment. Part of political judgment, let's be clear, part of political judgment, it comes from rich political experience. There's no question about that. You're not going to have good political judgment unless you've had rich political experience leading, being immersed in, being part of political movements and mass movements. So I'm not going to claim that political judgment just, it's just there in the genes. No. It requires a rich life experience, which is what Gandhi plainly had. But on the other hand, you could have rich life experience and you could have bad political judgment. I remember asking somebody about somebody who had rich life experience in politics, David Dellinger. I said, well, how was his political judgment? And the person said it was terrible. You can be a very decent guy, have lots of rich life experience, but still have bad political judgment. But I think political judgment, at the end of the day, it really is irrational. So when Gandhi spoke about his inner voice, he was just speaking to what we nowadays would call political judgment and political instincts, a knack for politics. And Gandhi had the knack for politics. As I said, the problem, of course, was you could never argue with him. It was impossible to disagree with him. It made for a movement which was very much top-down. You couldn't, with Gandhi, you couldn't even go on a fast without his permission. He had to give the permission because he says, I'm the general, I know about fasting, I have the life experience. If you want to go on a fast, you have to always get my permission. It's an infantilizing, I think, relationship that he created there. Plus, people tell me, I can't say for sure, but he's surrounded himself with mostly yes men. The people who his coterie, they were mostly mediocre people. They didn't have, except of course for Nehru, they didn't really, they weren't a very impressive bunch. Okay, having said that, what did Gandhi mean by nonviolence? Who knows the term he used for, yes?
Ahimsa?
Ahimsa is nonviolence, but what about the, exactly right, but what's the whole movement? Satyagraha, and what does that translate as? Anyone know? Satyagraha? Well, the loose translation, the one that Gandhi used, was hold on to the truth, or grasp the truth. I kind of like that as an idea. Some of you know the African-American spiritual, keep your eyes on the prize and hold on. And this is a kind of variation on it. Satyagraha means to hold on to the truth. And Gandhi actually, he's not himself, but I think it was a cousin of his, coined the term, because people were referring to his movement as passive resistance. And he would recoil in indignation and anger. He says, nonviolence is not passive. It's the most active force in the world. So he wanted to coin a different phrase, and he came up with Satyagraha. And I'll explain why in a moment he called it the most active force in the world. In any case, what did he want to do with the Satyagraha? And here I think I learned something important from Gandhi. It was useful for me to understanding politics. Gandhi's understanding of politics is very different than, say, the tradition I came from. When I was growing up, when I was roughly the age of the younger people in this audience, what we took politics to mean was there was a small group of people who possessed the truth. They knew what is the truth. In fact, our truth was so true that we called it a scientific truth. It was as true as the laws of physics. And our job was to go out among the masses, the benighted masses, and to bring light where there was darkness, to free them from their enslavement to false consciousness, commodity fetishism. We had all sorts of terms. But basically, we knew the truth, the masses were ignorant, and we're going to enlighten them. Well, Gandhi has a very different understanding of politics. For Gandhi, politics is The people out there, they already know what's wrong. There are 1,000 things that most people, from the moment they get up in the morning to the moment they go to sleep, they're venting about, they're indignant about. That's wrong. That shouldn't be. That's not right. That's unfair. That's how a lot of people go through each day, or in my case, go through my entire life, complaining about how everything is unfair or wrong or unjust and so forth. So for Gandhi, the problem was not that people were ignorant. That was not the problem for Gandhi. For Gandhi, the problem of politics is, how do you get people to act on what they already know is wrong? We all know 1,000 things are wrong. We all complain about 1,000 things that are wrong. But most of us, including yours truly, most of us don't do much about it. We don't get past complaining. And for Gandhi, the challenge of politics is, how do you get people to act on what they already know is wrong? Or as he puts it, how do you quicken the dead conscience into life? How do you get people to act on what they already know is wrong? And Gandhi's major insight, some of you may not think it's so brilliant, but actually the more I think about it, the more I realize he's right. He says most people will not act until they see others suffering. They have to see suffering. It has to be real suffering. It can't be, as it were, routine suffering. And so Gandhi, he wants to stir the dead conscience of the public about a wrong by having his followers, having them commit acts of extreme self-suffering up to the point of being willing to sacrifice one's life. If you read Gandhi's works, he has a kind of, you have to call it, he has a kind of death cult. He's very adamant, he's very insistent that you have, if you want to be my follower, you have to get yourself killed. And he would say, if you don't get yourself killed, I'm not interested. No, he would. If you don't get your, I'm using his words, if you don't get your skull broken, I'm just not interested in anything you have to say. Don't come back to me from a demonstration alive. Well, that's what he would say. Now, it wasn't because, obviously, he had a pathological streak in him, or he derived any great pleasure from another person's death. Obviously not, though it is true to say, in my opinion, that he tended to trivialize life, but that's a separate issue. It's because Gandhi was realistic. He understood, just for better or for worse, a fact of human sentiment. People are not moved to a degree of indignation that they're ready to do something. They're not moved to a magnitude of anger such that they're ready finally, I'm going to do something about that. They're not ready to do it until they see real human suffering. And anything short of that will not break people out of their routine way of going about business, which is venting here, complaining there, but not doing much about it. And everybody knows that. You know, I can give 1,000 examples. I remember during the civil rights movement, there were a lot of African Americans. They said when they saw the kids being attacked at the Woolworth's lunch counters, that's what moved them to get involved. The case of me with the Occupy movement last year, I heard about it. I thought, yeah, these guys have a point, but you know, I'm a little old to be camping out in Zuccotti Park or whatever it is, and my Woodstock days are behind me. So I gave, as it were, my moral support, which counts for exactly 0. And so what finally gets me to act? Well, one day I hear, 800 people are arrested on the Brooklyn Bridge. I said, well, now wait a minute, Norm. You've been complaining about how unfair this system is since the day you emerged from your late mother's womb. And now there are people getting arrested. So why aren't you doing something? And then the next turning point was when the cops pepper sprayed in the eyes, the demonstrators. Those are the things that get people to act. Now, the important thing about the Occupy movement, in Gandhian terms, was nobody had to enlighten the ignorant masses that our system is unfair. Everybody knows it, or at least has become aware of it in, say, the last 10 years. That 1% are making out very well, thank you, have a good day, and 99% are being shafted. The slogan, "We are the 99%," the reason it was a kind of brilliant Gandhian slogan is not that it enlightened people, is that it captured the sentiment that was already there. And that's what Gandhi's politics are all about. Not trying to enlighten, but trying to get people to act on the sentiment that's already there in people. And what it required is exactly what Gandhi said. It required, the bystanders, the sympathetic bystanders, it required them to see people getting arrested, people getting pepper sprayed. That's what human motivation is about. Now, there's one qualification that has to be made to that. And no amount of nonviolence, however self-sacrificing it might be, no amount of nonviolence is going to get people to act unless they agree with your goal. It's not enough that your means, your tactics are just. The broad public has to also agree with your goals, or your nonviolent tactic is never going to work. So what does that mean concretely? Well, you take the United States, about 50% of Americans, right down the middle, 50% of Americans call themselves pro-choice, and 50% of Americans call themselves pro-life. So if you were to do a little thought experiment, and you imagine the 50% of Americans who call themselves pro-life, they decide that in Gandhian fashion, they're going to gather en masse, descend on all the abortion clinics in the United States, and they're going to go on a collective fast unto the death until these clinics stop performing abortions. Now, nobody here can take exception to the tactic. It's the ultimate Gandhian tactic. You're not hurting anyone else. You're not inflicting bodily damage on anyone else. Quite the contrary, you're willing to give your life for your belief. But if you are pro-choice, anyone here would like to identify him or herself as pro-choice? Okay. Would that fast until the death move you? Certainly.
It wouldn't change my mind.
It wouldn't change your mind, of course not. In fact, most people who are pro-choice, they're thinking inside themselves, I hope they do go on a fast until the death. I hope they all drop dead. I gather from that laugh, you were in that group. The tactic of nonviolence can never work unless there's already an agreement, a consensus about the goals. And so you have to always, in Gandhi's Gandhi mind, you have to always concern yourself with choosing a goal that the public is ready for. If you choose a goal that exceeds what the public is ready for, that goes beyond what the public is ready for, they're never going to be moved to act. Now, in the time that remains, how much time do I have? 20 minutes, correct? According to my body clock.
Okay.
Yes, okay. The last thing I want to do, because there's so much misunderstanding about it, is what is Gandhi's opinions on nonviolence? The usual assumption, which I suppose most of you carry with you, and I did until I started to read him, is that Gandhi was categorically, absolutely, totally, completely against violence. Well, that's not true. It's actually a gross distortion of Gandhi's point of view. So let's start from the beginning, because I don't want end up myself exaggerating. There's no question Gandhi attached a great deal of value to nonviolence as a principle. And basically for two reasons. One, a personal reason. He thinks violence is personally corrupting. It degrades you, as he says, to the level of a beast. And so as a personal moral issue, he founded a degradation of what it means to be human. He also had a very practical political opposition to violence. And that's, he says that when you start practicing violence, it ends up almost always that the most violent people end up on top. And so what you end up with is just replacing one set of bad, corrupt leaders with another set of bad, corrupt leaders, and the people at the bottom end up, either way, the people at the bottom end up basically disenfranchised. The metaphor he liked to use was, the means may be likened to a seed, the end to a tree. That is, if you start using violence as a means, it's like a seed, and it's going to shape and influence what comes at the end. You can't separate the means and say, well, we recognize the means are bloody, we recognize the means are anti-human, we recognize the means are corrupting, but it's for a desirable end. It's for a desirable end. No, Gandhi says the relationship between the means and the ends is like a seed and a tree. If you're using corrupt means, you're going to end up with corrupt ends. And the system that you want to replace with a better system, if the means you use are corrupt, then the end is also going to be corrupt. It's not going to be a better system. Speaking strictly for myself, after a long period in life, seeing some sort of virtue in what was once called armed struggle, I am now more persuaded by Gandhi that the corrupt means or anti-human means ends up producing an anti-human and corrupt end. Well, what were Gandhi's views on the nonviolence? Number one, again, we accept as a basic principle, yes, nonviolence is critical for Gandhi. But there are quite a few exceptions. Number one, Gandhi believed that you're allowed to use force when you're in a situation facing impossible odds. Because the force, he says, is not really force in the sense of inflicting harm on someone. The force is a kind of instinctive reaction to trying to preserve your dignity as you're about to be killed. So Gandhi gives the example. He says if a woman who is resisting a rapist with scratches and bites, he says that's not really violence. That's just a woman trying to preserve her dignity before her death. And he says the same thing is true. He says in 1939, you have the powerful German army, the Wehrmacht. It invades Poland. The Polish have this rinky-dink army, a few tanks, a few artillery weapons. He says, yeah, they resisted. They used quote-unquote violence. But he says, when you have this army and this resistance, he says, that's not really violence. That's just an attempt to have a dignified end to your existence. Number two, Gandhi says, I can't tell other people that they have to use nonviolence if the world accepts violence as a legitimate means of resistance. He says, I can recommend it, I can prefer it, that is nonviolence, but I can't impose it on anyone because he says, well, that's the accepted standard, and who am I to say to anyone that they have no right to use violence if that's the accepted standard of the world. So in 1936, the Arabs in Palestine, they enter into revolt against the British mandate, and the British were in control of Palestine at the time, and the British are in control of India also. So obviously people are curious, what's Gandhi's position and what's going on in Palestine? And it was a very violent revolt. After a certain period, it became violent. And Gandhi said, look, speaking of what he called the Arabs of Palestine, he said, look, I would prefer, I wish that they use nonviolence. But he said, according to the accepted canons, C-A-N-O-N-S, namely basically the accepted rules, accepted canons of right and wrong, nothing can be said against the Arab resistance in the face of overwhelming odds. That's the rules of the game in the world in which we live. He doesn't like it, but he says, I have no right to tell people that they don't have a right to use force, because everybody uses force. And if it's legal for everyone else, it's legal for them. The more important for our purposes, because here's where I think the big misunderstanding comes in. The more important qualification for Gandhi regarding nonviolence is, and I know this will be a surprise to many of you, but I can assure you it is easy to richly document, as I try to do in my little book, which is selling for $5, which is like, I don't know, it's a slice of pizza with mushrooms and anchovies. So there's no excuse. Of course, there's a second step. I would like you to read it. I know that's a gigantic step. I'm going to put the book in text message form. That's an idea. I have to talk to my publisher about that. That Gandhi's foremost value, his uppermost value, was not nonviolence. It was courage. There was nothing Gandhi detested more, nothing he found more repugnant, nothing he found more repellent than cowardice. He loathed, he hated, he had complete contempt for cowards. And if you read through his collected works, you'll find there is only one place in Gandhi where he uses violent language. Because Gandhi believed that nonviolence meant to be nonviolent in thought, word, and deed. You had to be nonviolent in thought, word, and deed. But there's one place in Gandhi where he actually uses quite violent language. And it is not in denouncing people who do use violence. Actually, he was pretty soft on Adolf H., on Hitler. But on cowards, he is very tough. He says, and now I'm quoting him, "A coward is less than a man. He does not deserve to be a member of a society of men and women. Those who prefer security to freedom have no right to live." Well, those are very strong words coming from the Mahatma, and it's the only place in his collected works where you'll read phrases like that. The thing Gandhi detested even more than cowardice, he detested people who used his doctrine of nonviolence as a cloak to conceal their cowardice. So, somebody is attacking you, you run south, and you're asked, "Why are you running away?" And the person responds, "Well, that's because I believe in nonviolence." Gandhi says, it's not because you believe in nonviolence, it's because you're a coward and you don't deserve to live. Gandhi, "I cannot stand cowardice. Let no one say when I am gone that I taught the people to be cowards. If you think my ahimsa, my nonviolence, amounts to cowardice or leads to it, you should reject it without hesitation. I would far rather that you died bravely, dealing a blow and receiving a blow, than you died in abject terror. Fleeing from battle is cowardice and unworthy of a warrior." He said to his son, "Where there is only a choice between cowardice and violence, I say use violence." That's what I told my eldest son when he asked me what he should have done had he been present when I was almost fatally assaulted in 1908. Whether he should have run away and seen me killed, or whether he should have used his physical force, which he could and wanted to use, and offended me. I told him it was his duty to defend me even by using violence. Now, that might raise in the minds of some of you, coming now to that, that may raise in the minds of some of you a question, which is, if Gandhi values courage more than nonviolence, then shouldn't he be preferring violence to nonviolence because it takes more courage to be violent than it takes courage to be nonviolent? And I puzzled over that. If you say courage is the most important value to you, well, it does seem to me that going into a battlefield takes more courage than, say, being a draft resistor and going to jail. That seemed to me logical. But I think the problem is, it's because people don't understand what Gandhi meant by nonviolence. That's the biggest misunderstanding. What Gandhi meant was nonviolence requires much more courage than violence. Well, that's easy enough to say, and it's kind of soothing and consoling to believe it, but as a practical matter, it's kind of anti-intuitive. That just means your intuition tells you, no, that's not true. That's not true. Violence takes more courage than nonviolence. But that's because you don't understand, or I didn't understand, what Gandhi meant by nonviolence. So what does he mean? He says, picture the following. If you're in combat, you have a weapon, your opposite on the battlefield has a weapon. So you have something to protect yourself. There's a 50-50 chance you'll come out of the combat alive. You'll end up dead, or your opposite will end up dead. Okay, you're putting your life on the line, 50% chance. What does Gandhi mean by nonviolence? What Gandhi meant by nonviolence, and now I'm quoting him verbatim, you are supposed to march smilingly and cheerfully into the line of fire, and you're supposed to get yourself blown to bits. But that's what he meant by nonviolence. And that's why when you think about it, hey, you know what? He's got a point. That does take more courage than violence. With violence, you have a 50% chance. Your bullet may kill your opposites, or your opposites may kill you. You have 50% chance. In his understanding of nonviolence, you have 0 chance. You're supposed to get killed. Now, bear in mind, it's for Gandhi 2 things. Number 1, it's the personal thing, the value he attaches to courage. He loathes, he hates cowardice. But obviously Gandhi is a political animal. It's politics. He is convinced that getting yourself killed in a cause that the public perceives as just will get the public to act. That's what's required to quicken the dead conscience of the public. It requires people to get killed. So it's a personal credo for him, but it's also a political one. He says, wherein is courage required? In blowing others to pieces from behind, namely, you have your weapons and you kill others. In blowing others to pieces from behind a cannon, or with a smiling face to approach a cannon and to be blown to pieces. The odd thing about Gandhi is, and I'm ending here, a lot of people don't want to have anything to do with Gandhi because they say he's too wimpish. They want armed struggle and weapons. The thing about Gandhi is, in fact, is his, he sets the bar so high that there are very few people who can really meet that standard. There are some crazed people, crazy people, like in one of the departments in this school, who might go into the line of fire and get themselves blown to bits, but they're lacking in self-consciousness. But how many people in complete lucidity of their mind, complete collection of their thoughts, have the courage to march into the line of fire and get themselves blown to bits smilingly and cheerfully. So I think the irony about Gandhi is not that he's, or his politics are, so to speak, wimpish, but they require a magnitude of inner wherewithal and courage that I think very, very few people possess. Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to hear from people. I know it usually takes a little time for someone to break the ice. Good.
I have a question. I have to say that I'm an economist, so probably I'm influenced by my background. The question is, does Gandhi explain why people lack courage? Because it may be that they have an agenda, they have a personal agenda for the lack of courage.
The question is, does Gandhi try to explain why people lack courage? And maybe, I think a person was asking, maybe there's a rational reason why they lack courage. The thing about Gandhi is he's deeply steeped in his religion as he understands his religion, which is not to say other Hindus understand Hinduism the way he did. And Gandhi's understanding of it was sort of, it's hard to say without seeming unfair to him, but he didn't attach a big deal to life. He just felt there's life, there's death, these are the cycles of nature. Don't get so excited about it. And it's just God wills when you're going to die. So he would get messages, say a woman or a man, a friend of his, would write him a note and say, you know, my daughter, she was 6 months old, she died from typhus or whatever illness it was. And you know what Gandhi would reply? Big deal. She lived as long as it was intended that she should live. And if she died sooner than, say, you or I, that was God's intention. And it's no big deal. So, in part, you have to internalize his whole mindset to understand where this idea of courage comes from. On the other hand, it's also true to say that every culture produces, at certain points in each culture's history, values the equivalent of Gandhi's. So you say marching into the line of fire and getting yourself blown to bits for a cause, that sounds awful crazy. Well, in American history we have give me liberty or give me death. Or we have I regret I have only one life to give for my country. That every moment in the history of any people, there is a period where these kinds of sentiments become widespread and popular. So I don't find it altogether surprising that Gandhi's saying this, because he realizes, you know what, in order to get these British to budge, this is India, it's the jewel of the crown. In order to get these British out of here, there's going to have to be an awful lot of people getting killed. And I might as well prepare people for that fact. There's going to be a lot of death here, because these British, otherwise, they're not going to budge. They're not going to leave. I think that was realistic. He put it in his own language, and he wrapped it in a lot of, religious metaphors. But the bottom line is, as Gandhi said in his more candid moments, you are not going to melt the heart of Churchill. It ain't going to happen. He says the only language they understand, and I'm quoting him, the only language they understand is open rebellion. You know, sometimes Gandhi talks, and this is the stuff that's always quoted from Gandhi, that he wants to melt the heart of the oppressor. And he has, you know, the famous Dear Adolf letter where he talks about trying to melt Hitler's heart. I don't think Gandhi really believed that. Now, we can disagree, and I'm sure Gandhi would say he believed it because Gandhi prided himself on never lying. And I don't think he ever self-consciously lied. I think that's true, he didn't. It sounds weird and corny, but it's probably true. He never self-consciously lied. But I don't think Gandhi believed you can melt some people's hearts. And when you read, there's like two Gandhis. One Gandhi says, melt their heart. The other Gandhi says, we have to mobilize all our resources and create chaos here, otherwise they're never going to leave. Yeah.
I have a couple of things. I see things a little differently. One statement you made that the practical purpose was to mobilize the people, and unless they suffer and they see the suffering of others, they're moved by anger. My understanding is not so much anger as really very strong conviction into the belief. And I say this on the basis of having met and sort of grown up with a whole generation of Gandhians who lived with Gandhi, who undertook Satyagraha from the Dandi Kuch to all the way Quit India movement. And these people were not moved by anger. They were moved by very firm conviction. And I also know that in the ashram, those satyagrahis, the 70 or 80 people who were sort of the workers, mediocre or not, but they were very disciplined. And they were asked to be very disciplined, and they had to really meditate and think about things and then come to the conclusion. So this whole idea about courage, facing the enemy without any weapons on your side and going into the fire, all that came, it was like almost like an army. The discipline of these people was inculcated over a long period of time. It wasn't just people getting up and standing in front of cannons. It was really a highly disciplined movement, and he wanted to keep that discipline. So the second point I wanted to say is that sometimes there may be a confusion between maintaining discipline and being authoritarian. I think that it's hard to find a clear line on that. But I have numerous sort of personal, anecdotal knowledge about Gandhi being very respectful of other people's opinion. And in your own talk, you have said that he wanted to, he didn't want to educate the masses about what was wrong, they already knew. That really says there's a tremendous amount of respect for how people think and the way in which they see injustice within society.
Okay, actually, both of those points are important. And had I the time, I would have made more distinctions. There is what Gandhi called the Satyagrahis. They are the very disciplined, experienced individuals filled with deep conviction. You would call them, and nowadays, to use another language, they were the cadres or the core of the movement. But cadres and core, the 80 or 100, they don't make for a mass movement. Gandhi was true blue. He wants to mobilize the masses. There are 450 million, as he liked to say, dumb masses, meaning they can't express themselves. He wants all those 450 million moving. And then the question is, how do you get the masses to move? Which is different than his core of Satyagrahis. And the way you get the masses to move is his core are supposed to get killed. That was supposed to arouse the indignation. His big goal was, how do you get people, the masses, to act? And it was the Satyagrahis and their example, in particular, getting themselves killed, that was supposed to get the rest of the people to act. By the way, I think that's realistic. I mean, when you look around you and you ask yourself, I'm involved with the Israel-Palestine conflict, politically. And I say, nothing we do here can possibly change things until Palestinians themselves start to act and get themselves killed. I mean, it's a very regrettable fact. But that's what, what was the last, there were two moments in the last 3 years where the public was seized by the Palestine question. What were the two moments? One, when 9 people were killed in the Mavi Marmara, the Freedom Flotilla. That captured the public's attention. 2, when several Palestinians went on these incredible hunger strikes that lasted to like 70 or 80 days. Those were the two things. That's what seizes the attention of people and gets them involved. So I think Gandhi was, pretty realistic about that. If you take the Palestinian example, can everyone go on a hunger strike for 80 days? No. I can do 48 hours, and then I'm out of the running. Occasionally I do 48 hours in the spirit of the Mahatma. But that's about it. 75 days? No. That requires, as you say, training, conviction, something very, very deep that most people don't have. But it can get the rest to act. The second question you raised, people are contradictory. If you read Gandhi, he's very respectful of all of his opponent's arguments. I was struck that when you read his opponent's argument and then his rephrasing of the argument, he always rephrases his opponent's argument accurately. Most of us, when we rephrase our opponent's argument, we rephrase in such a way that it's easier to expose or defeat or whatever. No, he could be very respectful. That's true. And it's also true, as you say, it's the nature of politics that somebody at the end of the day has to make a decision. But I think you would agree also that there's a difference between a political movement and an army, and that if we want to build a movement, as Gandhi said, where the seed will produce a better tree at the end, we want our movement to be democratic as much as it can be. But if you read Gandhi, and it's interesting, your comment, Gandhi's always comparing his movement to an army. And he's always saying, I am the general in the army of the nonviolent. Now, part of it is, of course, Gandhi wants to show that his movement requires as much courage as any army does. And that part I can understand. The problem is, when you describe your movement as an army, it doesn't leave much room for democracy. I'm the general, and all the rest of you are just there to follow orders. And I think that's how Gandhi conceived it. I mean, I'm telling you from reading. I can't claim to be an expert in the practical realities, how he conducted himself. But there is a lot in Gandhi which, when you read it, it's extremely unappealing. It's just, don't argue with me, because you can't argue with me. Yes?
You said that Gandhi did not have really interest in developing a theory of nonviolence.
Mm-hmm.
How would you relate your understanding of Gandhian nonviolence with Gene Sharp's theory of nonviolence based on Gandhian principles?
I'll tell you the truth. I didn't read Gene Sharp. I don't know how he bases it. What I do know from quite a lot of reading is, I'm surprised at how few people have actually read what Gandhi has to say in this subject, and how divergent is the understanding of Gandhi from what Gandhi really said. For example, I doubt there's one or more than two people in the room who would be aware that for Gandhi the supreme value was not nonviolence but courage. And the supreme negative value was not violence but cowardice. So I'm not sure what Gene Sharp has. I've not read him, frankly. You know, until Gene Sharp was conjured up as the grand, wizard of the wizard of the Arab Spring. I would say about 6 people read Gene Sharp. Though he wasn't bad, during the first Palestinian Intifada, he was actually pretty good. Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking about Rachel Corrie when you talked about courage, and in your opinion, do you think she would be considered an example of the Gandhian philosophy of standing there without weapons, willing to sacrifice? I don't know if she thought she would get killed, but
First of all, I think what she did was, it's very impressive. I don't think I'd have it in me to do that. And her parents, for those of you who don't know, Rachel Corrie was the young woman who was in Gaza. The Israelis were going to bulldoze. American, yes. She's from Olympia, Washington. They were going to bulldoze the home of a Palestinian physician, the home of the family she was staying with. And she went in front of the bulldozer, and the bulldozer ran her down once, backed up, and ran her down twice. And her parents are just wonderful. I mean, Cynthia Corrie, Rachel Corrie's mother, is a very special person. So is the father, but Cindy Corrie to me is, she's in a class of her own. She managed to turn the worst horror that could ever befall a parent, namely the death of a child, into something positive. And that's really a very impressive feat. I would say that do you mind if I ask your name? Your name?
Maya.
As Maya said, to be a real Satyagraha, you were in the ashram, years of training, deep conviction. It's not something that just springs inside you. Rachel Corrie, talking with her other members of what was called the ISM, the International Solidarity Movement, who were with her, she did not expect to get killed. And her face just erupted in shock when it actually came to her, and she tried to get out of the way. It's not in any way to diminish her. It's rather to illustrate quite the magnitude of courage that Gandhi had in mind, that you're supposed to sit there and smile while it's happening. No, she was not smiling. She was, from what her colleagues tell me, she was seized with horror at the last moment. She could not believe they were going to go all the way. I could say also, I had a problem with Gandhi because he says smilingly and cheerfully. And remember, his goal is to evoke a reaction from the public, to get them to act. And I thought to myself, reading it, most people, if they see someone else smilingly and cheerfully getting blown to bits, most people will not admire that. They'll think these people are crazy. It emanates an aura not of bravery and courage, but it emanates the aura of a crazed cult. And I had a problem with that reading Gandhi. If, let's say, to take your example, if Rachel Corrie were sitting there the bulldozer's coming, and she says, "Come, run me over," and smiling, and yeah, run me. You think, this girl's a little batty. So I couldn't quite get that in Gandhi either. How would that really stimulate the public to act? Now, okay, I know you're going to tell me something about Indian culture that I don't know, and I'm happy to.
Nothing to do with culture. It's what I want to say that I had some knowledge about what the Satyagrahis. Sorry, and I think we're taking this all too literally, cheerfully and smiling. I think the main message was we have to do this with a degree of cool calmness, equanimity, not smiling away and and I think that is where the discipline that they inculcated in themselves came into being. I say this because both my parents were with Gandhi for most of their life, and they were part of the 70 people. They were Satyagrahis. And so I've heard not only from them, but many others who had participated in this, that it was frightening inside. It was a scary thing to go out there. And they sang and they held on to each other to encourage each other. But they would not budge.
Right, I have to say that I wish you had edited Gandhi's works and that we hadn't used the word smilingly and cheerfully, but you said, what was it called? Calmness. Because now what you're describing, what you're saying to me, that reminds me of the civil rights workers. SNCC, the Student Nonviolent. You're going into a small town in the Deep South that is very mean country, and you want to register black people to vote, and you're black yourself, and you don't want to show fear, you don't want to show cowardice, and you try to show that coolness and calmness. That to me, it registers better than what you read in Gandhi, which is smilingly and cheerfully. Now you say don't take him literally. I don't know how to answer that. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's a bad translation. That's.
I have an answer for it.
Okay.
In defense of Gandhi, I will use your word because you said Gandhi never attempted to develop a theory of nonviolence.
Say that again?
You said that Gandhi did not attempt to develop a theory of nonviolence. Right. So therefore, if he said that I'm smiling one time, who knows, maybe he said many times that he did not write about it, that, okay, when you face the guns, don't smile this time. So that was contradiction in some of his.
Well, but his collected works are full of his speeches. And every public speech he gives is collected there. And those are the images you get from him. Just you can remind me, when Gandhi himself was assassinated, was he smiling?
He was actually greeting.
What?
He was saying, he was greeting his assassin. Mm-hmm. I have a photograph of that very moment when it's just recently discovered. Nobody had it. It's recently found. Is that moment of being shot. And he was just sort of bending down like this and greeting him. And this man, his hand, you can see the gun in his hand.
After I read the Gandhi, only after did I watch the film, the Richard Attenborough film on Gandhi. And it's very interesting when you watch it, because you would never know from watching the film that it was not a Muslim who killed Gandhi, but a Hindu. It was a Hindu fanatic. And it is impossible not to be profoundly moved, to be just spiritually transported by that last year in Gandhi's life. There's just nothing like it. India has now erupted into this horrific bloodletting, Hindus killing Muslims, Muslims killing Hindus in numbers that boggle the mind. 1 week in Calcutta, there can be 10,000 bodies in the streets. Horrible. And you know, for Gandhi, beyond the horror is the humiliation. That here he had thought he built a movement on nonviolence. The British are leaving, and now how are the Indians carrying on among themselves? He had to be so deeply humiliated by that last act in the play. So the guy commands so much moral force, so much moral power, that they're begging him in this city and that city, Gandhi, please come to get them to stop fighting. Please come to get them to stop fighting. And Gandhi would come to this village, not village, he would go to this city or that city, and he would say very simply, if you continue killing each other, I'm going to fast and die. I'm going to die. You got to stop. And of course, he was main target because he's Hindu, is other Hindus. He goes from Hindu temple to Hindu temple, and he begins every prayer service by reading from the Quran. That's how he began every prayer service. It would drive the Hindu fanatics mad. Why are you reading from the Quran in the first place? And in the second place, they're slaughtering us and you're reading from the Quran. At the beginning, Gandhi would literally, he would stay in the temple the whole night. He would say to them, because there'd be like 2 or 3 fanatics heckling him, he'd say, I'm going to stay, I'm going to patiently explain to you my point of view. And he would stay for 10, 12, 14 hours just trying to explain why he's reading from the Quran. But, it's driving them crazy. And he persisted. It's just, and in a couple of places at least, the fighting did stop. You may not agree with him, but everybody understood in India. You agree with him or you don't agree with him, but at the end of the day, he reflects what's best in all of us. He is the best in us as human beings. If he says stop fighting, we'll stop. Now, it was interesting what happened, because of course he was called to another town. And so what do you do if you leave? And he would tell the people there, he would say, the heads of the Muslim and the Hindu community, he says, well, you better get yourself killed or I'm not coming back to help you. That was the requirement he set. He said, don't come back from a demonstration alive. And they didn't want to agree to that. But finally they said, okay, if that's what it takes to get you to come back, if troubles resume, that's what we'll do. And at the end, you get the feeling that Gandhi had sent so many people to their death that he felt he had to get himself killed. If you read, at the end, you felt Gandhi wanted to die. Because he felt, I told this person, you got to get your skull broken. That person, you got to get yourself killed. That person, you got to get yourself killed. Well, you know what? It's time for me to go. And I think he wanted to die that way. There are 10,000 things you can fault with Gandhi. I know I have to go. I'll just leave you with, when the Gandhi film came out, there was an article in Commentary magazine, this ghastly periodical, and it was by a guy named Richard Grenier. And it was a huge attack on Gandhi. And I'm reading, and I expected it would just be nonsense. You know, this is Commentary magazine, what do you expect? And I'm reading it, and I'm saying, well, you know what? That's true about Gandhi. And that's true about Gandhi. And yeah, that's true too. And these were all nasty things. And it was like a 50-page article, which eventually became a little book, filled with every imaginable nastiness about Gandhi. And they were all true. But I thought, but you missed the whole Gandhi. You managed to get every fact right, but you got the whole person wrong. He was a deeply impressive person. He used to say, I want to live to be 125. That would, I guess there's some sort of, in Yiddish we have bis 120, and there must be something, I guess, in Indian culture, living to 125. But he always said, I only want to live for one reason, public service. That's the expression he used. That's all he lived for, to serve the public service. It was pretty impressive. It was pretty impressive. It seems a little bit humorless and a little bit dour, but I talked to his granddaughter, and she said, no, it's not really true. Gandhi was a lot of fun on picnics. But, you know, public service. It's an impressive show. So I don't want to idolize Gandhi. And ironically, a lot of people walked away reading my little book by disliking him a lot. But if that's the result, that certainly was not my intention. He was a very impressive man, and he has even a very deep impact on any reader. I know it caused me to think a lot about a lot of things. I know I have to go. Just one last thing, which, you know, it caused me to think about. Gandhi, at one point, he wants to explain the difference between Western and Eastern culture. And he says, the basic difference is this. Western culture, or Western civilization, it's about multiplying people's needs and then increasing the technology in order to satisfy those needs. You have one car, you want two cars, you have a cell phone, you want an iPad, you have an iPad, you want a video. And that's what progress is in Western civilization. The multiplication of human needs, and then the multiplication or expansion of technology in order to satisfy those needs. That's what we call Western civilization. I think that's basically accurate. Gandhi says Eastern civilization is about reducing your needs until, as he says, when he was asked, what's your goal in life? What's your ideal? He always gave the same answer. I want to reduce myself to a zero. That's the goal. Reduce yourself to a zero. No needs. And the less you need, the less you become dependent on any technology, on anything external. So his goal was reduce the needs maximally and thereby reduce your dependence on technology and so forth. And I have to say, choosing between the two, I don't own a cell phone. I never used an ATM machine. I only got a credit card 2 or 3 years ago, my first one, because my laundry room, in order to use the washer and dryer, you have to use a credit card. And everyone always asks me, how could you live without a cell phone? You know? My best friend, he was once talking about his son's girlfriend, and he said, oh, she has such a horrible life, such a terrible life. Her father is abusive, her brother is a drug addict, she doesn't have a cell phone. And as an ideal, I kind of agree with Gandhi that it's a more desirable goal. I sit on a subway now. I see young people, your generation, those of you who are young in the room, and they have a wire coming out of every orifice in their body. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4. Professor Chomsky once commented he was observing his grandson doing his homework. And he says these people, they're stimulus starved. That's the expression used. Constantly have to be stimulated by something external. Constantly have to be stimulated by something external. And then when you contrast that with Gandhi, 3 hours a day has to be complete silence, calmness, internal peace, not dependent on all of these. No, I am dependent. Yes, I have my email, I have my computer. I would die without cut and paste on my word. I would. It'd be suicide if I didn't have it. But to try as much as possible to reduce your needs rather than becoming caught up in a culture which is constantly multiplying it more and more. You have to have more and more and more and more and more and more. I kind of agree with Gandhi. I think his is the more desirable ideal. That's how I see it.
So Gandhi may have spent 14 hours in the temple.
Yeah.
Professor Finkelstein wants to spend 14 hours, but we have come to the end.